Chase Elliott, defending series champion, ready to go, as is Ryan Blaney. Boy, what a dust-up they had last night here on the road race course. Who capitalized? The Candyman. And Martin Truex led a bunch of laps, too. As our drone takes a ride over the fan zone. Inside the infield, we are ready to bring you NASCAR Cup Series practice from Daytona on FS1, presented by Toyota. It's a beautiful day. A few light, puffy clouds here and there. A lot of sun. Temps in the mid-70s, a light breeze. Perfect weather. Can we just keep this for Sunday? Would that be a good thing? Hi, everybody. Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer with you after a wild and woolly exhibition race last night, the Busch Clash. Let's set all of that and road course racing aside and get to the business at hand, getting ready for the Daytona 500. This 50-minute session is the only practice session the drivers will have to get ready for single lap qualifying tonight and the dual race tomorrow.
Well, I think we're going to see a mixture. We're going to see some teams really focused on how do we lock ourselves into the Daytona 500 by going out and qualifying, making qualifying runs right here. And then we're going to see others that are going to focus on handling. How do we get our car to handle good, not just for the Daytona 500, but for these duels that are going to be coming up tomorrow night.
Hey, guys, that's where the driver comes in. You've got to get out there, get that hot rod driving good. These guys are going to want these cars scraping that racetrack. They're going to be dragging, but not too much. They want it touching. Trust me, they want that thing right down on the earth. But the other thing I always look for on a restricted blade track like this, I don't want that thing wandering around. If it's doing that by yourself single file, it's going to be even worse when you're in the pack.
Now, due to COVID, the development of NASCAR's next generation car has been delayed by 1 year. So, Larry McReynolds, how much or how little has changed since the last race in Phoenix in November?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, the good news for these teams, since the last time we were actually at a super speedway at Talladega back last fall, there's essentially been no rule changes. But a lot of these teams, they have brought brand new race cars here for the Daytona 500. But the challenge is exactly what you said. Walking that razor blade between speed and handling well. But I think if you feel like you've got a shot at the Daytona 500 pole, you're worried about single car speed in this practice.
We will see a mix of agendas, and we'll get into that when we come back. Practice for qualifying and the duels set to get underway. Denny Hamlin, defending champion of the Daytona 500, a race he has won 3 times, and 2 of those 3 by the slimmest of margins. Still in the garage area as the track is open for practice. Regan Smith.
Well, Mike, it's open for practice, and it's great to hear you say that. I almost forgot how to do a practice. It's been so long. Many of these teams, first time for them in almost a year of doing practices as well, said this is really strange today. The 4-car operation of Hendrick Motorsports spoke to all 4 crew chiefs there. The plan for them is to go out and do single-car runs this entire session. A lot of speed here last year in qualifying. This is one of the companies that thinks they've got a shot at the pole. 4 cars in the top 8 last year. Look for them to go out there, make the single-car runs. As for some of the other organizations, they do want to get in drafts, even if it's just with their team cars, such as the Toyotas. So look for a lot of different strategies, as you guys touched on at the top of the show.
And there is the newest driver at Hendrick Motorsports. Kyle Larson returns to the Cup Series.
He's back
for 2021.
And so is the number 5. You think of the history of Hendrick Motorsports, that was their first number.
The series champion, Chase Elliott, was chided on Sirius Radio the other day about, you know, in terms of experience and races won and titles won, you are the senior guy at Hendrick Motorsports now. He goes, don't tab me with that. He says, there's 2 out of these 4 drivers are older than me. He says, no.
And that's typical Chase Elliott style, right? Just to kind of downplay it. But, you know, Jimmy Johnson leaves Hendrick Motorsports, 7-time champion. And this is a guy that was mentored by him, but he is the guy that's going to, you know, that torch has been handed off to at Hendrick.
Well, it was a convincing argument because look at what he's done in winning the championship last year, winning on both road courses that we ran last year, and a string of being not only NASCAR's now champion, but most popular driver. Like father, like son.
And I want to go back to what Regan Smith talked about. If you think you have a shot at the pole position for the Daytona 500 or get yourself on that front row, then you got to go for it. And I just wonder if some of these other teams go, you know, it's important, but we think that racing our way through the duels and getting ourselves positioned for the Daytona 500 is the most important thing to execute today.
All right, Clint, here's some of your Ford buddies. Put on the helmet, take us for a ride here.
Yeah, absolutely. Just single file draft right here. You know, pretty elementary, but this is up to speed stuff. This is where you're working on your car, making sure it doesn't drag too much. That wandering that I talked about earlier in the show, you've got to make sure that all that stuff's down pat right here while you're out here in single file draft. See some Toyota boys here doing the same thing.
Now that is Bubba Wallace, the first time the new 2311 team has been on track.
And look who he's following right now. Denny Hamlin, sort of a teammate from the Toyota camp, but car owner Denny Hamlin also. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity for Bubba Wallace and that team. We have seen Bubba Wallace shine at this racetrack. He has pulled off some great runs, great finish here a few years back, and I gotta imagine that he's pretty excited about getting this. We all talk about, can this team come out and win right away? I don't know. I think it's going to take some time, but they might be able to here this weekend in the Daytona 500.
And so might the driver who's leading this pack, Christopher Bell, moves up from what was Bob Levine's team, moves up to the parent team, Joe Gibbs Racing, and occupies the seat in the number 20 held by Eric Jones last year.
Huge opportunity for him. We all know he's a wheel man. This is his opportunity to shine with the first class operation. I look for big things out of him this year. The roof flap already. I like that. Notice he's the first one in line and the fastest.
Now,
That's
before
pretty
the
weird.
cars went out in the garage, Kevin Harvick and rookie Chase Briscoe were having a long conversation, and here they are linked up in the draft. Regan.
Well, Mike, they had a long conversation before getting in the cars, but once you get in the car, things can be very different. Chase Briscoe's first race in this number 14 car. Take a listen to what he said once he got in that race car.
Like what I can see where the 10 is right now, I mean, see an inch and a half maybe of his left front fender out of my left side mirror, and then I can see the tip top right side of the roof. So just visibility-wise, like I can't really see him at all right there. Just so you know, placement-wise, kind of what I can see.
That's so important, good information, and he's going to learn with this car. That spoiler on the back of it's really, really tall, and it has that Lexan at the top of it. As soon as you get to racing in this 500, you'll get some debris and stuff on that back. That'll get dirty and make that vision even harder.
Briscoe won 9 times last year in the Xfinity Series. His goal was 8. He won 9. Most victories ever in that series by a Ford driver.
It's a good group. Johnny Klossmeyer, all those guys. I'm excited for Chase and his opportunity here. I think they're going to make some noise.
Clint, I'm a little surprised here. I mean, these 5 Toyotas are together. There's not really much of a draft or a group of cars in front of them that they can draft off of. And we saw a much bigger group. I thought the Ford's got a big toe. I expected them to go to the top of the board, but these Toyotas are putting some great times together.
Yeah, especially when those cars, you saw that pack catch the other pack right here. That should have been lights out for that group right there, and it wasn't, to your point. Toyotas are extremely fast. Here they come. This lap right here will tell the story. They finally caught them guys getting a huge toe for the 6 car.
And in front.
Still wasn't enough.
And, you know, we could talk. You brought up that roof flap. But, you know, we've been seeing these roof flaps get higher and higher and higher. Talk a little bit about what the philosophy is. I know it's, you know, to try to knock a little drag out of that race car.
Oh, absolutely.
Get some air deflect off the rear spoiler.
That's the biggest thing, is deflecting air off the spoiler. But also, in doing that, it takes downforce off your car. But hey, man, we're race car drivers. You want that thing as fast as possible, right? If you got to wheel it a little bit, let's do it.
But how tall that blade is, in fact, it is so tall, they had to make the upper half of it clear so the trailing driver could actually see through the spoiler and through the cockpit of the car ahead to get a sense of what was further down the road. That thing's got to be like a big parachute.
It certainly is, and we talk about vision and how important it is to be able to see what's behind you. Your spotter playing an important role. But Clint, the closing rate in the draft is so strong now. We don't maybe see it as much in these single car runs, but once we get out there bigger packs side by side, I mean, how difficult is it to catch up to what's happening around you?
Well, you just saw it right there with Eric Almirola in that 10 car. He drove right to the bumper of the 14, had to check. You'll hear the in-car camera here. He'll be working the throttle. Hopefully, don't want to drag the brakes too much because you're going to need those in the race coming on the pit road and stuff. But where you're at in this pack, the number of cars in that pack, that's all important and goes into the equation of how much throttle down you can do. That's what was so impressive about that short car pack that you were talking about with the JGR, the Toyota group. They were extremely fast. That tells me they were able to stay away from that accordion, stay progressive, moving forward with their speeds.
I saw where those Toyotas were able to get right up to the car's bumper in front of them, and I haven't seen that as much as some of the other cars.
Bubba Wallace, top of the chart, which is dominated by the 5 Toyotas in the early going of pre-qualifying practice at Daytona. (32 of 44 entries have been out on track, and look at how close they run here.
We can see what happens to the air as that front bumper gets to the rear bumper of the car in front of them, how much it changes and it gets the air spinning and turbulent over the top of that hood.
Definitely neutralizes that air. I don't know, you ever watch Ford versus Ferrari movie? Best explanation I've ever seen with that. That's that old school. I think it probably did that in your day, Jeff. Put the yarn out on the hood, put it all over the car and let it blow different ways.
I hate to say it, but I actually do think I ran a car in a tractor in a test with that on there.
With the little tufts of yarn.
Yes.
And whichever way they pointed, that's the way the air was taking it. Yep. Great movie.
Great.
Historically, not entirely factual, so what? It was a great movie.
I agree.
It's definitely, new group of Bubba. Going to stay right on his owner right there. Man, that seems reminiscent of what we used to see. But what was, 2000 with Dale Earnhardt and all those. He took care of his herd, his flock, right?
And, I mean, who better to learn from? I mean, you got Bubba who's already pretty good in his own right on these types of racetracks, but Denny Hamlin going for 3 in a row this year at the Daytona 500. You talk about the odds being against you and the chances of getting caught in a wreck. Somehow Denny Hamlin has been able to find the odds to go on his side when it comes to those closing laps.
And we saw it with Tony Stewart when he transitioned to team ownership while still a driver. Now, Denny Hamlin doesn't own that 23 car by himself. The player who made 23 famous, Michael Jordan. How about that? I want to win. He doesn't come to play. He comes to win. He's been in motorcycle racing. Now he's in NASCAR racing. He's not here to run around in the back.
He's going to bring a lot of pressure to that young Bubba Wallace.
Yeah.
That's what he's going to do. But the other thing you saw with this group, guys, I was hoping to point out, they're moving around. They're changing who's leading, who's riding in the middle. You got to do that because there's going to be cars that pull that line faster and cars that push that line faster. For whatever reason, they're all built in the same stable. They all supposedly have the same horsepower and everything in them. But I guarantee you there'll be a combination of that group that will be faster in one order or the other.
Well, Clint, you want to run through as many different scenarios, even though they're not going to be in a 20-car draft session in practice. They do have these 5 to 6 cars that they've been working with here to learn as much as they possibly can about what they're going to be dealing with tomorrow.
Practice, baby.
Hey, guys, talking about Denny Hamlin, that 11 car. You look at the 4 super speedway races last year at Daytona and Talladega, 2 wins, all top 4 finishes. That is tough to do on super speedways in 1 year.
That's for sure. So now they have changed the running order of this Toyota pack, which own the top 5 fastest laps of the day, ahead of the Chevys of Jamie McMurray and Corey LaJoie, and then a group of Fords. So now with Bubba out front, let's see if there's a change. Their last lap, 45.82 on point. 45.81. Kyle Busch was the fastest of those last time by. Quickest lap of the session, 45.05. And that was Bubba Wallace when he was in, I think, the second position
Faster.
in line. They're a little faster. They picked up a 10th with that change.
How that change happens, and more importantly, where that change happens. I think he pulled up and gave him going into 3, fell back in line. Sometimes that can, not sometimes, it definitely makes a difference on your overall lap when you're trying to see who's fastest here.
But see, this is something I like about Denny Hamlin. Denny's not just trying to see what his car's going to do behind another car. He also was playing around with the air. You saw he got to the outside quarter panel of his teammate Kyle Busch. He got a little push from the 19 of Martin Truex Jr., and he's wanting to see how much of a run can I get. What would it take to complete this pass and run if we were in the race?
Side draft is so important, difficult thing to do. And the other thing, man, this is practice. It's so hard to prepare yourself for what's coming in the duels and the 500 because you don't have the almighty block scenarios in practice. We tried that a few years.
Yeah, it did.
Then the owner said, hey, let's not do that anymore in practice.
35 minutes to go in this first and only practice before qualifying and tomorrow night's dual race. Beautiful day in Daytona for pre-qualifying practice. Qualifying tonight on FS1 and the dual races tomorrow. 5 Toyotas top of the chart, then 2 Chevys, and then 3 Fords filling the top 10. About last night. Oh my goodness.
No, don't do it. Oh, spins out after driving from the rear all the way, takes the lead, passes Martin Truex, and then spins in the dirt.
And it came down to the last turn, the chicane on the last lap. Ryan Blaney kind of left the door open. Chase Elliott stormed right in, and Elliott later said, I'd be mad at myself if I didn't try that move. Kyle Busch stole the Busch Clash. Here's Regan Smith with today's Toyota Driver Profile.
Well, that 19 car that we saw last night off Martin Truex Jr. so incredibly fast as they were out there for that Clash race. Asked him what happened in that last corner of the, in the backstretch chicane. He said, you know what? I just simply hit the mud, but I couldn't see the difference in the mud and the sand. Last year when we raced here in the daytime, you could see that that was sand on the racetrack and that there would be mud on the racetrack. Last night, a little bit dark on the racetrack. It blended in very closely together for him. It was just too difficult to see, and as you guys mentioned, first car through cleans it every time. He was the first car through.
Yep, leader cleans the racetrack for everybody.
Well, something I liked about that back straightaway bus stop, Clint, was how much these guys were putting that car in yaw to carry good speed through there and off the exit, to have that exit speed onto the banking. You really had to slide the car through there, and if you slid that car and hit that dirt at the same time, it was game over.
And honestly, nobody was doing it better than Martin Truex. He was getting away with making great speed, great momentum through that bus stop, and eventually it just caught up to him. But, you know, that mud is something, you can see the sand right there, but the mud's a totally different thing. It pulls that out of that infield, spreads it across the racetrack, right where you throttle back up. Pretty dangerous situation.
Do we need a stack of tires there, like at, say, Sonoma?
No, way more dangerous. When I say dangerous, right. I don't mean safety dangerous. It's catastrophic. You spin out.
I would like to see them maybe put a little bit more of a curbing back there for the stock cars. It's different for the prototypes, and
they ran Jeff. They ran 24 hours through there. Fine.
All right, we'll worry about that a week from Sunday when we come back for the road course. Here's Kyle Busch talking about his run.
10 out of 10 there on pit road roll. Overall, I just feel slow. I don't feel like I have good suck up at all. I can't get to the 20 in front of me. Felt like when I was second to the 20, Truex could really get to me, but I didn't feel like I ever had that to the people that I was behind.
Absolutely. 57 Cup wins, fellas. Only one he's missing is the Daytona 500. Could be the year.
Well, you know what it takes to win the Daytona 500? Some good drafting partners and a lot of luck. And he had it last night. All the stars lined up. If that can happen for him in the closing corner and lap, the same results could possibly happen in the Daytona 500 for Kyle Busch.
Now, right now, the Chevrolets are in the bottom half of this practice field. We'll explore that when we come back. 26.5 to go in this only practice session before qualifying and tomorrow night's dual races. Toyotas have the top 5 practice spots on the board. As you see, the bow ties from Chevrolet are kind of sprinkled through the top 20. But Larry Mack, most all of the Chevrolets that we expect to show speed here in Daytona are down in the second half of the field. What's up there?
Well, I've used all of my 18 monitors here in my room trying to go back and figure it out, Mike. And it appears to me the biggest agenda for the Chevrolet is one-lap single-car runs. And right now, the best we can tell, Kyle Larson in the 5 may be the quickest as far as by himself with no help at a 47.63, and his teammate Alex Bowman in the 48 not far behind at a 47.71.
Well, let's remember Hendrick Chevys have won the pole here at Daytona for the last 5 years. Larry has tools, doesn't he?
Look at his eyes, how fast they're moving around.
Larry, I thought this was racing,
There's
not
my boys
NASA.
right there. There's my boys right there.
Pretty sure you could send a rocket to space in that room right there.
I need to look at a hairpiece. I do not.
Wasn't gonna say anything.
That's called 2 years with Earnhardt.
Oh, man.
How's the SMT looking right there? I see you looking at it.
It shows wide open throttle, Clint.
God, you bring up Earnhardt, and it makes me think of some practice sessions we had down here during Speed Weeks. You want to talk about wanting to win practice. Man, I don't know if it was him trying to get in everybody else's head, or if he just said, I'm only going to be out front, so why do I need to worry about it? But, man, that guy would run so hard through practice to be out front.
I begged him in '98 about the 3rd or 4th day down here, get in the middle of the pack and let's see what we've got. His response was, don't plan on being there.
He didn't spend much time there either, ever.
Now, there are 2 distinct agendas here. Well, there's a lot of agendas here. But the biggest, I think, difference is the drivers who are guaranteed into the 500, the 36 teams with the NASCAR charters, and the drivers that are considered the open cars, the ones that will have to race their way in, and there are 8 open drivers. Now, Corey LaJoie changed teams, but that team the 7 has a charter, so he is in the show for the Daytona 500.
And Mike, it's been a while since we've had this kind of a scenario where we're going to have 4 cars that have to race their way in or qualify their way in if they can be the fastest of these open cars. And, man, that's going to be fascinating storyline to watch tomorrow in the duels.
Such a nerve-wracking thing. I can't remember what year it was, but something changed in the rules where I think I changed organizations or something, and we had to qualify in. And I'm not too. There was some big names in it. I think you may have even 09 or something. Or I can't remember the year.
Well, we had a little hiccup just this year because the 37 from last year, Ryan Preece for JTG Doherty, that charter transferred over to a different team for 2021. So here's Preece, who was a regular, ran all the races last year, had a pretty strong season. Right now, he's on the high wire without a net. He has no points. He has no charter. He's got a time in a race in, and right now Ryan Preece in 19th is the fastest of the cars that have to try to qualify for the 500. Timmy Hill and Garrett Smithley are 2 others that have to do this. Now tonight, in qualifying, we will know who 2 of these 8 drivers are that will move on to Sunday's race, because the 2 fastest in qualifying tonight among the open cars are guaranteed a spot in the 500.
Well, and pray in your car's fast today.
And what Preece has in his back pocket, they won the pole for the Daytona 500 a year ago in 2020 with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and they've got Hendrick Power under the hood, who has been so successful down here.
Now here's a story. Derek Cope won the 1990 Daytona 500. He has not been in a Cup car in 16 years. And he's of the age where you start getting all those letters in the mail from the Join the Retired Guys organization. No thanks. He is here for his final shot at a NASCAR Cup race. And Derek Cope will be in the Daytona 500.
And a final shot at winning a second Daytona 500.
Let's see, he's 62. He might have been getting those letters. Are they showing up in your mailbox
I was going to
now?
say, Mike, they're going to start showing up soon.
Don't you hate that? You're going to hate that. You're going to hate that.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Mike. You know where I was headed.
You know, Mike, 1 year ago after qualifying, the two things that we knew, to your point, that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was on the pole, Alex Bowman was on the outside pole, and ironically, the 16 car who had Justin Haley in it, Kaz Grala's in it this week, he was the fastest of the open cars 1 year ago, and that 62 car that Brendan Gaughan was in, that now, who's it, the 62 car?
Noah Gregson.
Noah Gregson, he's in it. They were the fastest two open cars when qualifying was said and done a year ago.
Eric Almirola has jumped up the board here, 13th in a group of Fords there from back at lap 5 earlier on.
Good lap.
Pre-qualifying practice presented by Toyota rolls on. Welcome back to Daytona. Cup practice for qualifying tonight on FS1 and for the dual races tomorrow night on FS1. One practice session, a lot of different agendas. Everybody trying to get ready, including Ross Chastain, new to the 42 team.
You know, if I'm Ross and that team, I want to get him out there and make darn sure that, you know, all those gremlins, all the things that I was talking about, the mirrors, everything that you're going to utilize in this race, you got to get comfortable with.
Larry, who's the new spotter for this young man?
I believe his last name is McGrennan. Spotting for his first time at a super speedway race. I told him, I said, best advice I can give you, start drinking heavily.
Come on. No.
You know, and Brandon's an aggressive guy. You know, he's an awesome driver. And I think that's going to be a good combination because Ross Chastain's definitely aggressive as well.
Yep.
Get us one more lap here.
He is up there amongst them. Spotters up on the roof.
And it makes such a huge difference having racing experience. I mean, you look at the spotters that seem to really be the ones that are recognized as the best, and they have some sort of racing background to have that experience to relate to what those drivers are going through out there, what they need.
As things have progressed competition-wise, you know, I think the spotter is even more important. You need a guy up there that drives the car, is what I tell him before the race. I said, the best advice for you is drive this car. Brett Griffin did a good job of that. I may not always agree with him, right? I don't know about that hole. I'm not going down there. But I want to hear it in my ear. I want to know that that option's available if I want it.
Yeah, on these types of races, and it's even evolved so much more because we talked about that closing rate. Now with that big spoiler, things happen so fast. Moves come and go so quickly that you need an abundance of information coming at you.
Talk. I mean, I told him, wear the radio out. I mean, that was the more information, the better. Again, you're just hearing it, right? It gives you something to think about. You need to know those options because they happen so fast. Everything is important in the rear view.
How about this, Daniel Suarez? I Fly. New race team.
Have you ever tried that?
Trackhouse, Justin Marks.
You ever tried I Fly?
I haven't, but
as little as you, I'd probably blow you through the roof of it. Turn the fan down, it's gone, boy.
Well, I've always wanted to go skydiving, but I don't know if I want to jump out of an airplane. So this is a
good option.
No, isn't that the deal in the building?
Yeah, what I'm talking
there's
about.
one right
Exactly.
there near Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah,
there is
in
one.
Concord. Yep, and you can go weightless.
Yeah, well, according to Clint, I'm going to have to strap some
We'll put a safety harness on you. Let me run the fan, too. That's what I want to do. I'm going to run a throttle on it.
Meanwhile, here's Kevin Harvick, who won the most races last year, and he and Rodney Childers accomplished everything but making it to the final round of the championship in Phoenix. And Kevin in the offseason said, you know what? It didn't matter because when we got to Phoenix, we didn't run like we'd run in past years, it wouldn't have mattered if we'd been in the Final Four.
Well, and Clint, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. It seemed like, you know, the mile and a halves, they were very, very strong. But when it came down, maybe not Bristol so much, but Martinsville, Phoenix, some of the shorter tracks where now that's where the championship seems to be decided. That's where they came up short.
And the first few years I was at SHR, those were our bread and butter. Short tracks, we look forward to them. You know, we were hit and miss on the mile and a half, I should say, with the organization. You know, Kevin was always lights out pretty much everywhere. But when I left there last year, the conversation and the focus was definitely on road courses and short tracks because we've added more to those and they're going to be so important this year.
Well, he is not the Tom Brady of NASCAR in terms of being the greatest of all time, but he is the elder statesman in this Cup field, just as Tom Brady was the oldest player on the field for the Super Bowl. And I would say Kevin Harvick is performing is at just as high a level as a Tom Brady here in his mid-40s.
But much like Tom Brady, if he's on that racetrack, you better not bet against him.
No.
Right.
And he just put down a pretty fast lap, 47.12. It looked clean. I didn't see him getting any help. Mock qualifying run there. They got to be pretty happy with those Fords over there at SHR right now with Amarola and now Harvick. Who was that
you know, the
team
Tampa Bay Bucks won the Super Bowl. Who'd they beat?
Tom Brady. Literally Tom Brady. At first, so I did this deal. Eric Amarillo, my old teammate, he threw out, I guess he's a Buccaneers fan, Tampa boy.
Well, he's from Tampa.
So at some point this week, I got to wear a jersey. In the second period
Sounds
of that,
familiar.
that second quarter, I'm thinking, well, my jersey's going to be a referee, right? It's going to be a referee outfit. But once it happened, I'm going to have to go to the jersey. But I'm not buying it, Eric. You're going to have to buy it. Not going in. It better be a Brady because he single-handedly beat
I was going to say, you might have a hard time finding a Brady Tampa Bay jersey right now.
What are you laughing at? 2 straight years our analyst has lost the Super Bowl bet.
I know, right? I know all too familiar. And there's one guy I really don't like losing to. It's this guy right here.
Right.
It felt so good to
Way to go, Eric Almirola.
I know an analyst that never loses. Roll Tide right
Close the door, turn out the lights. 12 and a half to go in pre-qualifying practice. Early this morning, our Fox drone went for a ride over on the street side of Daytona International Speedway along US 92 International Speedway Boulevard, and a look at the grandstand, which Sunday will be populated by 35,000 fans on hand for the Great American Race. That number larger than the Super Bowl, but determined as a percentage of overall seating capacity. So it'll be great to have the fans back in the stands.
I just can't say it enough how exciting it is to be back at a racetrack. You know, we did all these broadcasts last year, Mike, from a studio in Charlotte after that Phoenix race, and you know, once the pandemic really shut things down. So boy, it is amazing to feel and hear the race cars on a racetrack,
and especially at an event like the Daytona 500. And I call it an event because it really is. I mean, the speed weeks, everything that encompasses this Daytona 500 race is so much fun down here, and certainly a lot of fun to be here to see it firsthand.
How about riding here with Ryan Newman?
I don't think anybody is happier to be back at the Daytona 500 than that man, Ryan Newman.
Boy, just again, the thoughts in that horrific crash in that closing lap or feet to the end of Daytona 500, and to know that this man walked away from the hospital 2 days later, unbelievable. And now here he is back in a race car, going to go try it again.
Certainly things that you'll never forget in your life, and this was one of them.
Brian Blaney trying to give him a push to win the race. He goes into the wall and then up and over off the hood of Corey LaJoie's car. After a lengthy extrication, he went to the hospital, and it was a couple of anxious days with little news until he walked out. Tom Rinaldi will have a sit-down with Ryan during our pre-race show for the 500.
Tell you a little bit of story behind that. There was a caution that set that up, right? Set that last start up. And I actually was ahead of Ryan going into turn 1 when the caution went out. Well, it went back to the last scoring loop, and I knew that that was the position to be in to win that race. After the race, I was mad. I didn't see that, right? I didn't know that all happened. Got back. I'll never forget my brother come up to me in a car and say, "Hey, that was a bad wreck." And I was over there complaining and finding an official. I'm like, I should have been in that position, you know. After that, I was like, yeah, maybe I was glad I wasn't in that position.
Well, boy, how far safety has come. When I see that, you know, and that kind of impact to that area of the car, and you look at the cage there and the seat, and you know the headrest, all those things that protected Ryan Newman from that really being a devastating crash.
Well, it was 20 years ago, the first race on Fox, when we lost Dale Earnhardt on the last lap of the Daytona 500. That will also be included in our pre-race Sunday. A look back, and then a look through the last 2 decades at the tremendous turnaround that NASCAR made, making driver safety and environment a huge priority. And I think the greatest legacy of Dale Earnhardt is that since we lost him in February 2001, we have not lost another driver in any of NASCAR's 3 national series.
And you saw that onboard shot there of Chase Elliott and the innovations there, the seat, the headrest, the padding, how these drivers are now contained almost in this cocoon, you know, in the protection, how strong it is. You saw Chase Elliott pull that Hans device on. I had a bad crash in Vegas several years ago, and I really don't think I would be here today had it not been for that Hans device. And of course, this isn't showing the safer barriers around all these racetracks that really have had a huge, I think just the significance of it, of the impact. And I know, Clint, you've hit a wall without a safer barrier and hit one with one. It's night and day difference.
It's the single most safest thing we've done, really, honestly. But when I got out of the car last year, and I'm not kidding with this, that was the safest I ever felt in a race car. The seats, the Hans, the Encompass, those walls that you're talking about, we're pretty darn safe as race car drivers in this sport. And just to your point,
well, it takes a village. They're the safer barrier. A Newbrook crash by Jonathan Ingram talks about the development of the Hans device, the resistance to it, and explores the Earnhardt and Senna crashes. It's definitely worth a read. And high marks to Brett Bodine, the first NASCAR driver to embrace and use the Hans device. Tomorrow on FS1, 7 Eastern, the Blue-Green Vacations duel at Daytona. 2 150-mile races to set the field for Sunday's 500. How will they line up for the duels? We will find out tonight. Pole qualifying for the Daytona 500. Race Hub at 6 here on FS1, and Daytona 500 qualifying, single car qualifying 1 round at 7 o'clock. The front row will be set, and 2 of the 8 open drivers will lock themselves into the Great American Race.
Mike, have we ever qualified for the Daytona 500 at night?
I don't think so. So we talked about Ryan Preece, and he had a lap of his own at about 47.50, and how he ran all last season, but the charter that JTG Doherty was leasing for his car, that they were leasing it, and the ownership of the charter moved it over to Spire Motorsports. So here's Preece, who has no points, no safety net. He must either time in tonight or race in tomorrow night. So where's he spent every evening this week? Racing his modified down at New Smyrna on the half mile.
There you go.
Yep.
That'll get you dialed in for the Daytona 500.
he's an animal in that thing, too.
Well,
awesome modified.
He does do an awesome job with his cars. I think any driving, anything you can do to get behind the wheel of any kind of race car is always good over the offseason.
So the obvious question was why? He said, because I like to race to win. He said, I love racing in the Cup Series, but I want to get in something and try to race to win, and that's why he brought his own modified down here to race, along with the late models and ARCA cars and all the excitement down in New Smyrna on the short track.
Well, him certainly racing in the Daytona 500 is a win. And I think anybody that's in this race in a car that's close to capable can win that race.
Yeah.
And Mike, we've been monitoring him. By far, he is the fastest open car in this practice on a single car run.
So Bubba Wallace has the fastest lap, and yes, he was in the draft, I think second in line, or toward the back of that 5-car draft when that happened. But he'll have bragging rights going into this evening.
Yeah, let's not the details get in the way here,
Right.
Mike.
It's a good story.
Listen, if he ends on top, that is a win for Bubba Wallace, 23-11, and Michael Jordan's going to be seeing that. That's the first person they're going to text.
Speaking of seeing, look how rigid that car is.
Yeah,
Look at it
he is
bouncing around.
bouncing
You
a lot.
definitely tell. Very, very rigid in there.
That's right. We were first. The how and why really doesn't matter. Now, if you're 21st, the how and why matters a lot.
Just hustle through 1 and 2 for me. Bring it to the bottom, down the back.
Well, you can really see his head bouncing around in there.
So you got those 5 Toyotas, and who's the next fastest and first in class? Our Fox buddy Jamie McMurray. His Chevrolet is 6th quickest.
Yeah, I got to say, that lap right there on Bubba Wallace, I don't know if he had any help. I don't see any cars really near him, but
Extremely
that's one of the
fast.
fastest single-car runs I've seen. The King!
Richard Petty having a word there.
Jamie Mack's going to be fun to watch.
Yes, he will.
The red and black flags are out to end this session. We'll be back to wrap up. Bubba Wallace coasts into the garage in his new 2311 Toyota. Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, the co-owners. He is fastest going into qualifying. Is anyone surprised?
I mean, according to Clint, it's kind of already written in the books.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know. But, hey, let me tell you something. Fast in the draft and by himself. That car is going to be one to beat not only tonight, but then on Sunday in the Daytona 500.
Well, we'll see tonight who wins the pole for the 500. Regan Smith, what we learn in this hour?
Well, we learned there's some fast Toyotas out there, Mike, as you guys just mentioned. Hey, you know what? What I learned was I missed practices. It was a lot of fun down here having these cars running around. The last 15 minutes of this session, I'm telling you, the radio's lit up. Guys were getting excited trying to get that one final lap in. Tonight's a big deal for them.
Oh, look, this guy's trying to fix his roof flap.
He's trying to take off.
Tonight, Race Hub, 6 o'clock. They will get you ready for Daytona 500 qualifying, which we will bring you at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, Toyota, Ford, or Chevrolet? Who wins the pole? Clint.
I'm changing my... At first, I thought it was a Chevrolet. Toyota all the way.
Jeff.
Well, I didn't see the speed out of the Chevrolets right there that I expected, so they're going to have to bring something that we haven't seen so far to qualifying tonight. But how do you count them out? They've won the last, what, 8?
8 of the last 9, something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah, last 8. Coming up, The Herd with guest host Nick Wright filling in for Colin. And we will get ready to qualify and set the front row for the Daytona 500 later this evening, right here on FS1. Thanks for joining us, folks.